This is a special edition of Tracking the Tropics. From Central Florida, I'm West 2 meteorologist Eric Burris.
And in Savannah, Georgia, on WJCL 22, Chief Meteorologist Jeremy Nelson.
All right, so Jeremy, obviously the big story is Tropical Storm Debby. We've got the information there on the bottom corner, but I'll take a couple of minutes and just kind of discuss what we're seeing as of the 8 a.m. intermediate advisory. Maximum sustained winds are up to 60 miles per hour. Recon is investigating, looking around. If you notice, though, on the satellite imagery here, we're seeing some of those darker red shades. We're starting to see some of those more pink cloud tops there, indicative of a strengthening storm system.
Yeah, and we're expecting it as probably the last couple days now, somewhere as it gets into the northeastern Gulf of Mexico, some additional strengthening potential. This makes landfall as a hurricane now. That's been the forecast for about the last 24 hours or so. And that's why up in parts of the eastern panhandle into the Big Bend, they now have I believe hurricane warnings up there, correct?
Yes, there are some hurricane advisories. So let's take a look. Obviously, there's the satellite imagery. We'll take a look at the advisories just so that we can kind of go through those hits, runs, and errors. Highlighted in red here, you can see hurricane warnings in effect. Highlighted in light blue, those are tropical storm warnings. So the difference, hurricane warnings mean hurricane conditions are expected in those areas. Tropical storm warnings mean that tropical storm conditions are expected in those areas. For my Central Florida coverage area, we are under tropical storm warnings for Sumter County and for Western Marion County, meaning tropical storm conditions are expected there. In yellow, Marion County, Lake County, Polk County, even parts of Alachua County, under tropical storm watches. Those mean tropical storm conditions are possible there. And those tropical storm watches go all the way up to your area, Jeremy.
Yeah, and those were just issued this morning. Again, this for us looks like we don't say it often when it comes to tropical systems, but kind of a long duration event where we may start to see a little bit of rain work in today. But really the bulk is Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, potentially into Thursday. Hopefully this is out of here a little bit quicker, but erring on the side of caution right now because models definitely don't agree once you get past just a couple days. So, and that's really shown here in the forecast track from the National Hurricane Center. I mean, very good consensus right now in the Gulf. But then once it gets right near the Florida and Georgia state line area, that's kind of when craziness happens. I mean, we get that right turn, we get a stall. Some models want to kind of push it out, loop it back around. And that's why you see those symbols so tightly packed because it's not really moving a lot once it's over Southeast Georgia or hugging the Southeast coastline. And then look at that area of uncertainty. That's huge.
Yeah, this is where tropical forecasting becomes difficult because the landfall into Florida and the effects in Florida seemingly are fairly well forecast, fairly well expected. But after that, we do think that atmospherically it loses its steering and just kind of meanders and becomes a pretty significant rain event for you. So at least in Florida, let's just kind of take a bit of a closer inspection in the next few hours' time. National Hurricane Center's 5 a.m. cone is what we're looking at. There will be a new cone issued by the Hurricane Center just before 11 o'clock. And if we're still broadcasting, we'll have that for you live updating. But we see later this afternoon a stronger tropical storm. The Hurricane Center anticipating winds being up to 70 miles an hour by 2 a.m. tomorrow, so overnight tonight, essentially, expecting a hurricane with winds of about 85 miles an hour and then making landfall more than likely as a Category 1 hurricane in the Big Bend area of Florida, a fairly sparsely populated area, but there are still people that live there. There will still be people that are impacted by this. Though that said, my coverage area not in direct impacts. We are under a level 1 out of 5 risk for strong to severe storms in our eastern areas and a level 2 out of 5 risk for scattered strong to severe storms in the rest of Central Florida, and that threat will end up going north toward your communities, Jeremy, looking ahead to tomorrow and even Tuesday.
Yeah, that's why once we saw that the track a couple days ago shifted just slightly to the west and then ran into Eastern Panhandle or Big Bend, we started to increase our tornado threat. Now, it doesn't look like maybe widespread tornadoes, but with these tropical systems, you can often get some quick spin up tornadoes. So we think, at least for coastal Georgia, the low country areas around there, Monday and Tuesday would be our highest chance. And especially if you're down to the south of Savannah, maybe around the Brunswick area, towards Jessup, coastal areas of Liberty County, down into Long County, and then all the way towards Jacksonville. So those are the areas with a little higher tornado threat versus the closer you get to, like, say, Charleston.
It's an interesting dynamic, right? And just looking at where we're at in terms of radar right now, we've seen several tornado warnings for Southwest Florida. So there's definitely kind of, there's the spin, there's the energy. And one other thing that I'm noticing, Jeremy, is over the last few hours' time, the circulation has started closing off. In other words, this morning when I was on the air here at WESH, the whole western side of the circulation was open. And we're now starting to see that rain, that convection spin around. And now that that's the case, more than likely Debbie will be able to start increasing its intensity perhaps a little bit quicker.
Yeah, and also maybe that last 6 to 8 hours or so before landfall, the forward speed is probably going to start slowing down just a bit. So that's something else we'll kind of keep an eye on as it gets into the northeastern Gulf. So if it organizes now, it still has pretty much a full 24 hours over warm water yet.
Right, because that landfall looks to be more along the lines of, at least in Florida, you're kind of looking at midday tomorrow, something to that effect. Flood watches are posted because of that concern of rain. Let's just take a look for western parts of Central Florida. So Marion County, Sumter County, Polk County, and Jeremy, those flood watches go all the way up to your area, including your entire coverage area, as a matter of fact.
Yeah, and I would say that's the number one impact, and probably the thing we've been stressing the most here. Your house doesn't get blown down from this system, with the looks of it right now in my area. Maybe some tropical storm force wind gusts. We see those with thunderstorms in our area. What we don't see is several days of rain potentially. Some of that heavy at times, where the totals start exceeding 10 inches in spots. So I know we're starting to see these huge numbers thrown out there, like historic rainfall, 20 inches, 30 inches. That 30-inch total, by the way, was mentioned in a discussion by the National Weather Service. So when I woke up this morning, it was just all kinds of questions about that. So Eric and I were talking. Now, one thing we always stress to people, there's extremes with the computer models. So if you're prepared for the worst, you'll certainly be ready if it doesn't hit that threshold. So right now, our forecast is at least locally, basically like 6 to 10 inches plus of rain. Definitely, the threat is there for totals to get a lot higher than that. But right now, I can't say with certainty that this is going to just hang out for 3 days over our area, because it's Sunday and we're already looking ahead to, oh, this will hang around Wednesday, Thursday. So prepare for, I would say, 6 to 10 inches or more of rain, with the potential there for higher totals.
And that's what's just so difficult with tropical systems, right? Because you've got two areas of high pressure. This is kind of trying to thread a needle before it loses complete steering, and it's all in the timing. If it speeds up, if it slows down, that stall could happen over you. It could happen over me. And some of the models are trying to figure this out. Some of the models, eh, like the GFS, and we'll look at all the models here in a little bit, but I feel like depending on the model run, some of these models really don't know what's going on down the way there just a little bit.
Right, especially because you mentioned it, the steering currents after this is over land kind of turn it to the northeast, but then we've seen models that take it out over the Atlantic, loop it back around. Others that just kind of slowly turn it to the northwest, and then you do have some models. I think it was the Icon model just kind
Hmm.
of progresses it off, and that's
Yeah,
why that one had some lower rain totals, like 6 to 8 inches.
right.
So that's why, to just a blanket a forecast with 20 to 30 inches of rain, that would be the all-time wettest system ever in Savannah. Hurricane Matthew had, I'll look it up here in a moment. I think it
Yeah,
was 18 or 19 inches of rain,
yeah.
which is a lot.
So we were talking about this on my coffee talk, and I said we were going to have to bring you in on it because I have no idea. Savannah, when I go to visit your area, the one thing I love so much is the trees, right? And I've got to believe that you put 15 inches of rain down, that a lot of trees are going to come down, a lot of power outages are going to happen.
I always tell people, and it's just kind of like a joke here, that like you get a summertime thunderstorm, we get power
Yeah,
outages. We had thunderstorms a few days ago, and I think about 3 to 5 thousand people were without power for a
right.
time, or customers, or however they term that. We've also had 2 to 3 pretty significant flash, or not flash. You can use flash flooding. I think one time we did have a flash flood warning, but where we had street flooding that was significant 2 to 3 times in about the last 2.5 to 3 weeks now.
Yeah.
So we've been dealing with this, and you can just go back on my Facebook page, and I was posting flood videos here within the last week or two. So now we're talking about rainfall totals that would be exceeding those events. So street flooding here is a huge thing. And then another thing, maybe you don't see this in Orlando as much, but
Yeah.
maybe towards your coastline. For Savannah, if you pair up torrential rain with a much higher than normal tide, keep in mind there's really nowhere for the water to go because it has to go into those rivers, streams, and a lot of them are tidal driven.
Right.
So if you're pushing a storm surge or you're filling those with rainwater, uh, it's harder for that runoff to get out of the city.
Yeah.
And that's why the street flooding here at times can be definitely dangerous.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I mean, we've got the St. Johns River that definitely backs up around Astor, so that's one of those things that we have to watch. And interestingly enough, the St. Johns River flows northbound here, so it all ends up around Jacksonville. So yeah, we'll have to see. Definitely a big flooding concern for coastal Georgia and the Low Country of South Carolina. But what's first for Tropical Storm Debby? Let's take a look and see what the model data is showing here. This is, and we'll just start off with our in-house model. This is the Futurecast model, which I would add has been very strong. It has consistently tried to, at least by 7, 8 o'clock tonight, become a hurricane, and then overnight almost undergo a rapid intensification. I'm not saying I buy that necessarily, but it's been a very consistent message with this model. And Jeremy, 4 a.m., it's showing it moving pretty quickly to the point of making landfall around 7:30 tomorrow as a decent hurricane. What do you think?
If that is true, and again, this I assume you're showing the like IBM slash
Yep.
graph
Yep.
model.
Yep.
Historically, that's done pretty well with the tropics. I would say this season, maybe it hasn't done quite as well as previous seasons, but we always take the information kind of once it does make landfall, jot little mental notes down. But if this does make landfall at even just say 8 a.m., that's like 6 hours ahead of
Right.
the forecast from the National Hurricane Center, I believe.
Yeah, yeah. And if that's the case, certainly if we could get this to slide not only through my coverage zones, but watch how it would put it near you by 5 p.m. Tuesday. And then that's where it ends. But, you'd hope that it continues away. If it's going quicker, maybe it can skip out of town quicker and not stall. That certainly would be the desired output, at least.
Yeah, and if it would get far enough, even if it goes into the Atlantic and it would scoot out far enough, it might take that wall of heavy rain with it
Right.
somewhat. So we would take that as a win if we could get out of the heavy rain.
Yeah, no doubt about it. All right, let's take a look at the European model, see what's doing here. This is the latest 6Z run of the European, bringing it up to the Big Bend. That's 4, 5 o'clock in the morning, making landfall about 8 o'clock in the morning as kind of a minimal hurricane, which I think is pretty close to the Hurricane Center's forecast, but do notice that time frame. That's 7:30 in the morning. So even the European model is trying to go perhaps a little bit quicker.
Yeah, so you're looking again there right around the same time frame as that previous model.
Right.
And I'm trying to look here. There is some new model data coming in, so I'm kind of glancing off to the side from time to time. But I would say the new NAM, maybe not a tropical favorite model, but we're just kind of getting an idea of timing. That one is right on cue with the National Hurricane Center. That has landfall around 2 p.m. Kind of, I don't know how if you have a real designation where the Panhandle ends and the Big Bend begins, or if
Right.
it's all kind of one and the same. But
Yeah.
I would say somewhere in that area.
Interesting. All right, so let's take a look here and look at the GFS. Now I saved this for last because this is a mess. Have you seen it yet, Jeremy?
Well, I mean, I got messages with,
Yeah.
hey, is it looping and all this and that. And
Yeah.
sometimes I
Yeah.
just try to separate
Totally get that. All right, so
fact from fiction. And
we're gonna look at it.
I would definitely look at it.
I'm not
One
gonna.
thing I would tell people,
Yeah.
though, is remember, I think initially some models had it looping around in the Gulf or
Right. Oh, it
doing
did.
weird things there, or crossing Florida and looping back. And so,
It's not out of the realm of possibility. It's just
right.
not something I do not want to have to do 12-hour shifts for a week to a week and a half's time. But that's just me being selfish. That's all. All
Well,
right.
I don't think people at home want to deal with a tropical system for 24 hours a day for 3 or 4 days.
No. So, all right. So here it is making landfall very near Tallahassee, near Apalachicola, at 7 or 7:30, and that's a little further west than the other models were. But follow through time here. All right. It kind of does this little bit of a loop around, comes around, hangs around the low country, and then we lose. I have to actually. It says tracking the tropics. It's going to say Wesh in the corner. Don't hate me. I have to turn off
Okay.
the auto tracking here for a minute, just because it goes so far away from the National Hurricane Center's forecast that I have to go into manual tracking. But watch through time here, all right? It kind of comes off the shoreline of view, loops around, goes into Alabama, okay? Let me widen this out just so you can see this craziness. Comes back out off the shoreline around Mobile Bay, gets back out off the panhandle, reorganizes, and comes back in as a hurricane around Tallahassee. But that's August 12th. So that's like a full week away, and then goes back over to your area by August 13th, 14th, and then finally exits the shoreline. That is one of the crazier things I've seen in quite a while.
That's what we call an outlier right now.
Yeah, yeah. Let's hope that no other model decides to come around to that. So, at this point in time, it is an outlier. At this point in time, thankfully, everything seems to be dialed into the idea that we're going to see this making landfall in the Big Bend, and then at some point it slows down. But the overall steering, hopefully, is enough between the Bermuda high and kind of this continental high that it's able to slowly sneak away and not just sit over the exact same area for a very long period of time. Because if that happens, Jeremy, I've got some of the QPF numbers here, some of the rainfall data. You could be, we know you're going to be talking about a significant rain. This is the actual rainfall forecast from the Weather Prediction Center showing 15 to 20 inches of rain possible in your area, though.
Yeah, and that's if we get into not that it would be like an eye wall, but if you get sort of just outside of the center of low pressure where there's that sort of ring of heaviest rain and this
Yeah,
isn't really moving, you'd be talking about rainfall rates of probably like 2 to 4 inches per hour
sure.
potentially with a
Yeah.
tropical system. So even if you're in that for 3, 4, 5 hours, not 3 days, I mean, you could be picking up 5 to 10 inches of rain in a morning or afternoon pretty quickly.
And for those that, this is going to be probably the first tropical system that many of our areas have dealt with this year, right? Tropical downpours have such a different flavor. Even if you look at it on radar, if it shows red during any other day, that red with a tropical feeder band just hits different. It is so torrential. It is so blinding. And so, yeah, it doesn't take long for these rainfall numbers to just add up and add up and add up. It really is such a unique property to tropical systems.
Yeah, and even people that live just a couple states north of us that come down here, our intern Jacob was from the Nashville area, and he just was like, "Man, your thunderstorms, your
Yeah.
rain down here is so different." But think about it, how much moisture we have stacked up in the atmosphere for
Mhm.
these, whether they're thunderstorms or tropical systems to work with, and then they're feeding off from Gulf or ocean waters as well. So they're just moisture laden, and then all that starts to get squeezed out of the atmosphere. So that's why our the precipitable waters or rainfall rates down here are really some of the highest that you see anywhere in the country.
Yeah, yeah, no doubt about it. They call it the deep south for a reason, right? All right, questions, comments, concerns. We've been just talking and talking and talking. Now it's your opportunity, friends, to talk. Share your thoughts, share your concerns, ask a question or so. Jeremy, I think from my area, um, you know, the big thought process is that this is thankfully not going to be like a major hurricane hit, right? Like this is not going to be an Idalia. Um, um, an Ian, an Irma, a Nicole. It's going to be a big, rain with a name almost across many of my locations. I would say though, for your area, my concern is for your area, and I would imagine your concern is more specific than just my area. It's the flooding, right?
Yeah, and they've already some schools were starting up on Monday. They're already pushing that
Yeah,
back. They don't have a set date to start yet. I mean, we don't really know for sure. Is this gone Wednesday? Is it hanging around through Thursday?
right.
One thing, if you have it handy there, we don't need it this second,
Mhm.
but I'm getting questions about the winds. Do you have any type of map that's maybe more like the southeast that you have that we could show some wind gusts or
Yeah.
something? I've been telling people,
Current or
and
modeling? What
that
do you want? And I'll find it.
Just anything with wind gusts that's maybe attached to like the graph
Yeah,
model.
yeah, I got
You
you.
may have something like that
I got
handy.
you.
Um, so we're not looking in my area at hurricane force wind gusts. What we are looking at is maybe winds that could be 40 miles per hour or higher, some of the gusts, and we usually get the higher gusts at the coastline. But you do start to pair up maybe 6, 10, 12 inches or more of rain with winds like that, and some of these super old trees that are weak, diseased across our area.
Yeah.
We could have some issues with down trees, I think, as
Yeah,
well.
I mean, just look at this is again this is our in-house modeling, right? And that's that's strong tropical storm force, almost hurricane force winds in your area. Looking ahead to what is that 11 o'clock tomorrow night, so you're going to be in that ballpark of some significant, impactful weather in that time frame.
So let's see here. That time frame is late Monday.
Yeah,
So I do think some of our stronger winds start to pick up the later we get into the day on Monday. Now, initially, the coastal areas, you're dealing with like a frictionless flow, nothing in the way. Your winds are directly onshore initially, so you could have wind gusts a little bit quicker that reach tropical storm
right.
force. And for my area, we also have a storm surge watch. I think that's a wild card because I was looking at the tides from the National Weather Service, and I think they're holding back a little bit because we're a little bit uncertain exactly kind of how much storm surge there would
Yeah.
be, how's it going to get paired up with water coming in. So the highest tide right now in my area is still below minor like coastal flooding.
Right.
So I think that will get adjusted. We are in a storm surge watch. It says 2 to 4 feet. But even if you get a storm surge of that, if it's not paired up with high tide, a lot of people don't even notice it.
Right, right. But if it is paired up with high tide, if you get that in the wrong time frame, it's a
Right.
really wrong situation. Let me ask you, Jeremy, because this is a big impactor for the entire WJCL area. How are you impacting your home? You live there, right? So, like, what are you doing for anyone that lives in your community?
Well, I think at least the spot of Savannah I live in, I mean, it's up a little bit. And I just, when I told you I was outside doing just a little bit of water mitigation,
Right,
trying to like, hey, I know where the water runs off my roof line
right.
and hits, and I don't want some issues with that. So kind of just redirecting water. So for
Yeah,
me, hopefully a minor impact. But you get to parts of Savannah that are very flood prone. I mean, we've seen this recently over the past few weeks. Those areas, I mean, people there really have to be stressing, and I know that some of the cities, municipalities are
right.
offering people free sandbags. So I would definitely take advantage of that. I
Yeah.
posted a photo on my Facebook page. I was in driving around downtown Savannah last night. I did see some sandbags in front of at least one business down there. So
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
that'll be a scene that's a little more common. People don't want water running in if they can help it.
Sure. No, I mean that makes total sense. I have a lot of my viewers asking, and I do want to just mention this just because it's coming certainly close to Florida first, and then it'll get up to your area. So a lot of people are asking kind of county by county where we're at. So let me get into some county by county maps across Central Florida just to kind of give you an idea. We're going to start with western communities, so Sumter, Lake, Marion counties. The thought process here is that you will see the worst of the weather, particularly this afternoon, overnight tonight through tomorrow, midday or so. Northern spots, so Marion County, even North Sumter, 40 to 50 mile per hour gusts. Southern spots running 30 to 40 mile per hour gusts. But you could see 5 to 8 inches of rain. This could be a good, significant soaker, right? And then again, because we're on that right front quadrant, there is the theory that we could get into some rotating type storms. There's actually two tornado warnings in effect right now in Southwest Florida. Our sister stations, WBBH and WZVN, tracking them, and it looks like there's probably several other couplets out near Port Charlotte that we're watching, as well as my colleague here in the Weather Center is pulling that up. For the Orlando metro area, 30, 40 mile per hour winds and 3 to 5 inches of rain. But again, the metro area not under any kind of tropical advisories. And so to that point, we're not expecting but some squally weather, and there's that tornado threat. And for our East Coast communities, 2 to 3 inches of rain, winds of 20, 30 with some gusts, and there is that tornado threat. So, yeah, two tornado warnings. Probably will have a third one in Southwest Florida. That environment works toward me later today, tonight, and tomorrow. But I think, Jeremy, given the direction of everything, the rotation element should stay off of your East Coast.
Yeah, we're hoping so, at least for today. We think though Monday and Tuesday there's a slight risk of severe weather, especially to the south of Savannah, and then a marginal or lower risk over the city here. And that's really just for the threat of spin up tornadoes. That's something we'll have to be watching very closely. And I know Eric and Kellyanne are keeping everyone informed there in Orlando. Our entire weather team is working here in Savannah around the clock, and we'll be keeping you updated as well. So if there's a tornado warning, we'll be the first on. We'll definitely let you know, and we'll stay on. We had some tornado warnings here about 9 days ago now,
Yeah.
so we covered those. And whether it's a tornado warning, flash flood threat, um, anything with the tropics here, we get into a tropical storm warning. We'll be letting people know. I don't know if we would get like a hurricane watch here. It
Yeah.
might be offshore
Right.
for our area, something like that, where wind gusts might threaten that. We'd probably need a stronger storm in the Gulf and then a little quicker movement onshore for something like that. I think we're just squarely a tropical storm, but I think this raises a good point. People are like, oh, it's just a tropical storm. But when you're talking about a foot of rain or more,
Yeah.
very slow movement, that's a high impact event.
Oh yeah, yeah. Rain with a name can still be a big flood, right? Like it still can be. I mean, a significant weather impactor. Look at that near Arcadia, which is just outside of my coverage area. But you can see the bright green and the bright red. That's showing the rotation, and then just south of that, look at that, two other rotating couplets. So these tropical tornadoes are usually very weak, very quick spin ups, but I see three decent little spins in the atmosphere there, Jeremy, and probably will see more before this storm system is done and over with in the peninsula.
Yeah, and that'll start to work its way up Florida and then probably into coastal Georgia sometime on Monday. So I just looked it up. Looks like here we had about 17 and a half inches of rain with Hurricane Matthew in
Wow.
Savannah.
Wow. That's
So
wild.
I mean, that was a hurricane that was offshore. That would move by, in the grand scheme of things, somewhat quickly. I
Right.
mean, it did not stall or pause. That was had a movement the entire time. You and I both covered that storm.
Yep.
So that dumped 17 and a half inches of rain. Now we're talking about a tropical system that could be overhead for maybe 2, 3 days, something like that. So
Yeah.
we'll have to watch this very closely because, I mean, a rain total could get upwards of 20 inches or so.
Well, and we got that with, with Ian and Nicole a couple of years ago, and I mean that caused all kinds of horrible, horrible, horrible impacts. So it happens right on these types of tropical systems. They're just so full of moisture. Rose Lopez says my fear is of tornadoes and loss of power. I mean, I certainly think that you are not in the minority. I mean, you lose air conditioning in the summer, and that's terrible, right? And tornadoes can just be so destructive as well. That's such a big concern. Let's see. Any other questions, comments, concerns from anybody?
I know
Lori's. Oh, go ahead.
we do have a ton of people on, and if we don't get to your question
Yeah.
here, a lot of people are asking me if we are going to get to the top end of the rain possibilities here,
Yeah.
because everyone, um, I love people that are enthusiastic about weather, but sometimes we say it time and time again, people that are maybe weather enthusiasts or just the general public that share maybe the craziest thing they see online or
Right.
whatever, then we are taking a lot of our energy to try to like dispel or ease people's fears a little bit. So I think a lot of people have seen some of those just astronomical numbers, and then people attach to that this will be the worst rain event in the city's history.
Yeah.
Again, certainly, if you look at the record books, if you get that much rain, yeah, it would be. But we have to see if this is going to move,
Right.
stall, and where the heaviest rain sets up.
Well,
So,
and this is the latest of that FutureCast model for your area through Wednesday morning, and so I mean it's showing
okay.
a foot
Yeah.
to a foot and a half of rain possible in your area, with some spots even higher. So that's one run of one model, but we have to understand a computer model is only as good as the data that it gets, and each time it's going to tweak and adjust and adjust.
Yeah. And one thing last year when we had Idalia come right over our area, I think it was like 2 days out, that same model had a stripe of about, I think it was 7 to 10 inches of
Yeah.
rain right over the Savannah area.
Right.
Now, we did see that, however, it was shifted probably 50 to 75 miles inland.
Right.
So
Right.
we did see that, but it didn't end up 2 days ahead of time being over that exact spot. I think maybe we had 2 to 4 inches of
Yeah.
rain from
Yeah.
that storm where there was flooding, but it stayed inland. So the model you showed, where you do have some pockets of what was that? Was that 18 to something?
18 to 24. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so the fact that model has it, I would say, okay, now let's take it over the general area and say
Right.
maybe that's the top
Right.
for some spots, but
Yeah.
maybe not everyone.
Yeah, don't write home on the specific location, but rather the model saying this is a possibility with this atmosphere. So yeah, no, I think that that's perfect. Debbie asks the question, spelled differently. The screen says it's the 8 a.m. advisory. Is there a more current version? There is not. So the way the Hurricane Center does things, you get your 8 a.m. intermediate. The next advisory will be around or just before 11 o'clock in the morning. They do, once the storm gets super close to land, they do start doing hourly position updates and things like that, but they have not started that yet. And I did see somebody else was asking that they keep thinking this is going to be like a Hurricane Charlie. It's not. It's off of the West Coast. This is not going to turn into a Cat 4 and make a hard right turn into Fort Myers. It's actually already past Fort Myers. It's kind of a beam about Sarasota, Bradenton right now. So it's not going to go into Southwest Florida like that. The atmosphere is just a bit different. People are asking about recon. They're finding winds around 65 or so miles per hour. So I would suspect that the 11 o'clock advisory would be a little bit stronger once they get that out, if they find that again.
Do you have the IR satellite? We can see if that looks any sort of healthier
Yeah.
in terms. You said the winds went up, then we may start to see that looking a little more organized.
Yep.
Still kind of definitely no eye, and maybe we won't see one. That'd be a
Right.
great thing,
Yep.
but we'll see if this starts to look a little different, maybe 6 hours down the road.
Yeah, yeah. This is a 2 hour loop on the satellite, by the way. It's the 1 minute mesoscale imagery, and I just kind of, went for 2 hours. So yeah. How bad is it supposed to be in Bradenton? Jessica's asking that. I would say for Bradenton, Bradenton being under tropical storm warning, suspect you'll get tropical storm force wind gusts in some of these outer bands, but otherwise, not anticipating anything more than that.
And someone else was mentioning in the comments here on the WJCL page, make sure you have batteries for any flashlights, or if you're going to be without power, maybe it's for an extended period. If we start getting some of these torrential rains or the gusty winds across our area, keep in mind there's only so many crews that can go out and restore power. And also keep in mind they're working in the same elements that you're trying to kind of hide from and
Right.
stay inside. So have some patience. If you do lose power, it's never a fun thing. This is a warm, humid time of year. Even with temperatures in the 80s, you're still looking at dew points well into the 70s. So
Oh yeah.
I would say always be prepared. I know it's cliche. Some say we say it all the time, but this is definitely something to take seriously. At least in my area, for sure, with the flood threat.
Oh, yeah, no doubt about it. Take a look at some of the winds, though. These are just some recent gusts, and you can see as this feeder band is coming in around Pine Island, Captiva, Sanibel, we'll certainly start to get some higher numbers. Bowie, just offshore of Sarasota, registering wind gusts of about 56 miles an hour, and that's removed from the center of circulation. But notice around the Tampa Bay area, 29, 37, 46, 44. So there's definitely tropical storm force winds. There's already tropical storm conditions along the West Coast, and it's just kind of starting to make itself felt. So it's going to be a couple of days of impacts, and I think that the National Hurricane Center has done a fantastic job of issuing the watches and the warnings so that folks are aware of exact impacts in their locations. And over these next couple of days' time, those areas are going to be the areas that get tropical storm force wind gusts, hurricane force wind gusts. There again, the watches and warnings across the state of Florida. And then I'll play this out to extend beyond to your area, Jeremy, because that does include tropical storm watches there as well.
Yep, our watches were just posted. I think it will be in a tropical storm warning potentially sometime on Monday, and we may stay in that Tuesday and also on Wednesday. On the side here, I'm keeping an eye on the NAM computer model. It pushes the low off from the coast of Georgia near, I would say, Brunswick or Jekyll Island sometime late Tuesday, but then it has almost no movement there for a little bit. So, yeah, it's going to be around for a while, but
Yeah.
it does appear once it gets offshore a little bit, then that core of heavy rain kind of shifts with it a little bit.
Hey, take the dub when you can, I guess, right?
Yeah, well, it doesn't mean that it, I guess, wouldn't spin back.
Yeah, that's
We'll
true.
have to see. But that model has pretty solid foot of rain, Jacksonville, Brunswick, towards Jessup. It has about 8 to 9 inches of rain in Savannah, but keep in mind that's just through Tuesday evening.
Yeah.
So we still have Wednesday and Thursday to go. So I would plan on at least 6 to 10 inches of rain, higher in spots, and then some wind gusts that will be topping 40 miles per hour. Higher than that, definitely at the coastline.
Stephanie's asking on your page if there have been any reports of school closings. I know you had mentioned pushing back. Is there any more specifics to that?
No, a lot of the schools that were supposed to start tomorrow, and I can't speak for all the schools, but we have been sending out some push notifications to alert people that some schools are not going to be starting their first day tomorrow, and they don't have tentative back dates yet. I would say probably going to have to be off through maybe Wednesday at the
Yeah.
very least right
Right.
now.
Right.
We just want to let everyone know schools don't usually consult with Eric or I, so
Hey,
we
I've
don't we don't get to make the call.
my Seminole County and I go back a long way. We talk, but I'm not the one that makes the choice. But we
Right.
talk, and I to any superintendent that's watching, I will give all the meteorology that I can to help you out, because
Yeah.
those are difficult choices to make. And so if and I know Jeremy would do the same thing. See, I'm volunteering you. But I think that it's all about student safety, right? And I know at least
Hmm.
for Seminole County, the school district that I talk a lot to and have for over a decade, it's all about like, can the students walk safely to and from the bus stop? Can the buses, very large, high profile vehicles, operate safely? So, if there's ever any question there, that's when you start to see schools close. Because if you're in a building, you're in a shelter, right? You're fine. It's just getting to and from. So I know that that's the big concern there. Any other questions on your side, Jeremy?
I don't think so. I know we have additional calls coming up. You have some potential tornado coverage. It looks like you may end up doing yet today.
Uh, Let it be after 2 o'clock when Kellyanne and I are done for the day. Well, I have a feeling we'll be busy tomorrow morning. We'll let Tony and Cam get the the stuff later today.
Right. Yeah. All right. Well, when you're done, go take a look at the NAM. It
Yep.
actually has the low kind of pushing off the coast a little bit. Unfortunately, though, it's not really moving it to the north, so it kind of goes out. We're just hoping it doesn't come back in.
Yeah, Jeremy and I have a corporate conference call to hop on in a couple of minutes. So, all right, Jeremy, thank you very much for your time, my friend. And I will tell you all that in the event that Jeremy is busy with his television coverage on Tuesday, Tracking the Tropics will go on. I will try to, I don't know if you'll be at work, what you'll be doing, but if you are unavailable, Jeremy, I will step in and cover as if.
Okay.
And if you are available, we will do it as we normally do.
I should be available,
Okay.
and maybe we'll have some video or images of what it looks like in my area,
Yeah.
or potentially where it made landfall in Florida, and we can let people know kind of what's happened, and then we'll obviously look ahead. And then coming up on Tuesday, pending what's going on with this storm, it looks like we have another storm tagged by the National Hurricane Center, and we'll have to start kind of looking ahead to that one
Yeah,
too.
it's a 10% chance over 2 days time, a 20% chance over the next 5 days time, but
Okay.
we'll get there one thing at a time. All right, Jeremy, I'll see you in a couple of minutes on the call. From Central Florida, I'm West 2 meteorologist Eric Burris.
And one thing I want to mention,
Yeah.
make sure if you're in Eric's area, download their West 2 app for all the updates. In my area, Southeast Georgia, in the Low Country, WJCL 22 news app. They're all free. We keep all our tropical updates on there, and you can get the alerts sent directly to you for your neighborhood. So, again, thanks for joining us in Savannah, Georgia, on WJCL 22 Chief Meteorologist.